This conference will now be recorded.
Here in the Village Hall, we have our Community Development Chairman, Drew Pearson. We also have one of the committee members, Jason Ackerman, and then I'm also present. So I'm going to turn it over to Drew to go ahead and start the meeting, if you would like.
Yeah, I'm just, my computer just started, restarted so I'm
Okay.
trying to just pull up the agenda here. real
All right,
quick,
so sorry we're all having a little bit of difficulty, but.
Got it, here it is, otherwise.
You need the agenda?
Yeah, do we have an extra agenda? That's all I need.
Shoot, that's the board meeting one. Here's the community development one. That's it. And then.
All right, roll call. Do we need to wait for Kelly for that?
Kelly will not be here, so I will go ahead and take the roll call. We've got the meeting recorded. So, Trustee Pearson? Here. Trustee Ackerman?
Here.
Trustee McKinnon?
Here.
Thank you.
And do I need to call out everybody that's on the meeting too, Frank? So we have
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that we have in the village office, like I said, we have Drew Pearson, committee chair. We have Jason Ackerman, trustee, and a committee member. Village president Frank Eubank. Since we're able to meet by executive order of Governor Pritzker stating that we're still in an emergency due to COVID, we are allowed to meet virtually and have our meetings virtually. We do need to have all votes by roll call. And then joining us either by phone or virtually through camera and some type of electronic device, we have Greg Haynes from HMI Inc. We have Mike McKinnon, who is also a trustee and a member of the Community Development Committee. We have Trustee O'Rourke. We have our treasurer, Sally Bennett. We have Julie Brown from Grand Stay Hotels. And we have our village attorney, Mary Gaziano, all coming in. This meeting was posted more than 48 hours in advance. It does have the login information for a virtual meeting. So we have complied with the statute for the meeting.
All right, thank you, Frank. Number 3, conflict of interest disclosure. Does anybody have a conflict of interest? Hearing none, we will move on to number 4, public comment. We have no one signed up for public comment, and we have no one here in the village office. Moving on to number 5, approval of the community development minutes from December 1st, 2022.
Chairman McKinnon will make a motion to approve the minutes.
I will second it.
Not Chairman, but Trustee McKinnon.
Yeah, it's not Public Works.
I'm still in the routine from last night. I haven't adjusted.
There you go.
I second.
Seconded by Trustee Ackerman. Roll call. Trustee McKinnon,
Yes.
Trustee Ackerman,
Yes.
and Trustee Pearson says yes. I would like to skip over number 6 on the agenda, the Region 1 Land Bank, and go to the hotel feasibility study, which is number 7, on the Winnebago Grand Stay Hotel.
Okay, Drew, I'll take the lead on this just initially. As you know, the village had a hotel feasibility study done several years ago by HMI, and Greg Haynes was the lead in that study. And we had some interest, possible interest from hotels, and we did not have anyone interested in actually building a hotel here in Winnebago during that time. But Julie Brown had contacted me, gosh, it's been in the last year or so, Julie, that you contacted me and said that there may be some interest to see if Winnebago would be a good fit for the hotel brand that you represent. And
Yes.
we brought that to the board to talk to Greg Haynes to update our hotel feasibility study, and he gave us some options, but There was one option that I felt would be best for what we needed. It was a pretty robust update, but it still allowed for the individual end user, company, hotel to, if they wanted some more specific information, he could do that and pretty much we could have it on their dime. But he was going to update our study so we could present it to people like Julie and others that are representing different hotel brands. So, in talking to Julie more recently, I know when we brought it up to the village board, there were concerns about, well, do we really need to spend this money? What's it going to do for us? Are we just going to have another one sitting on the shelf? Uh, what is Grand State Hotel? What is their interest? How strongly, would they like to be here? And really, how is that going to work? Do we have to do all the work and find investors and that kind of thing? So there were a lot of questions. And so the board ended up not approving the expense for the update to the hotel feasibility study. So in talking to Julie and then emailing Greg, I felt it was really my fault for not understanding completely where they're coming from, and I was not able to present it to the board, I guess, appropriately, so they would have a full understanding. So I thought it'd be best to have Julie and Greg here to kind of explain to us what they're looking at, why they feel this is necessary, and just understand they don't work with each other, but they do, in their lines of work, interact with each other because one prepares the study, the other one reviews the study. So, Julie, if you don't mind, maybe giving us a little bit of background about who you are, where you are with Grand Stay, and why Winnebago, and maybe kind of what you're looking at from the village.
Okay, I will do that. Again, I am Julie Brown with Grand Stay Hospitality. I'm the Vice President of Franchise Sales and Development, and it is my job to get out and find markets for us to pursue developments in. We are out of the Twin Cities. We are an upper mid-scale boutique hotel. We have got 33 open hotels at the moment and 2 under construction, one in Algona, Iowa, and one in Johnston, Iowa, which is suburban Des Moines. I am trying to indeed grow the business. And I basically, guys, was referred to Winnebago because of a potential investor in another market that we are working on who told me, Julie, my wife is close by. We need a hotel in Winnebago drastically, and there is nothing there. And that caused me to start digging in with Frank and learning that it had been, a bit of time since you guys had your study in January of 17. And, one of the things that we look for are updated studies that are probably, and we've got the COVID factor in there. So, even late 19 is beginning to get a little bit old right now. Plus the COVID factor added in. We've seen interesting trends in the market this summer travel season. We saw, the thing called revenge travel is what it was termed. And I'm very positive about the market based on what I know about there in Winnebago and what an update could do to, get us to move forward with greater vigor than we already have. My goal would be to, get that study updated. That 17 study, I believe, was for 50 rooms. My goal would be to connect with the owners that Greg would identify and visit with them about their ground, their prices, their options, their potential interest to invest. And, our investors, guys, we put together, they decide to get in based on what our pro formas look like. And our developers are the ones who develop those pro formas. But just getting a general idea to begin with is where I start. If somebody says, I don't want to have anything to do with investing, I just want to get out, that's fine too. We've got other pools of investors that we can draw from. We like to do business locally. One of my goals would be to see who was in and around the area that had hotel development experience, and starting with, the owners, the city, any referrals that anybody would want to give me, I'd be happy to follow. That developer, is the one who leads the charge, working with the city on the incentives, getting a development agreement together. They put the performa together to share with investors. And at the very least, there's going to be, subs used from the area. Hopefully a construction company from the area. That kind of depends on who the developer is and if they have their own construction company. These are things that are yet to be identified, of course, but we also look to the local area for financing, and we will have meetings with banks there to determine financing terms. We will talk to them about, any thoughts, advice, anything that they have for us. We're very open-minded. We'll potentially talk with them if they have any, potential investors from their, client portfolio. We're happy to go down that path as well. When I talk about our boutique hotels, we really, we serve the market, and our decor reflects a local market. We aren't like the big flags that, have a, one set standard for everything. We have a minimum set of standards. But the boutique style of our hotels, especially with some local flair, is really special. And you can check out some of our various locations. They all have that special effect. And I think that's a very, very positive thing for the community, for the people who stay there. We offer basically a continental breakfast. We've got a workout facility, a pool, a meeting area. Grand Stay will recommend a third-party management company for the facility, and assist with the management from pre-opening through the end of the hotel's life in operations and marketing. We have a super customer service rating, just a very, very much a quality product. Our president has been in the business for many, many years and runs a great ship. Any questions of me?
Frank, I have one question. This is Mary Gaziano, village attorney, and maybe I missed it. I was trying to take notes in that regard, but what I guess I was trying to determine is that I know that you are the vice president, I think you said, of franchise development. Now, and you said that you were referred to Winnebago because of a potential investor in another market. How much of what you do is finding the investors versus getting ideas from the village as to who could be potential investors? Because I think that was part of our issue at the beginning. We don't have a
Right,
list of people that we
right.
know that are investors. So could you expand upon that a little bit about what you do or what kind of base you have of these types of investors that might have
Right,
interest?
right. Typically, our developers will be investors, and most of the developers have investors that are, in their hip pocket. We like to offer up the opportunity to local folks because typically that's where greater enthusiasm is. They know the community, they believe in the community. And these are of course based on, cap rates and returns on investment. But assuming that those are, in a good position, you'd be surprised at the number of local people that might come forth. And again, that's not a necessity. We're not really looking for the city to play a part in that, other than if there is a recommendation of somebody they know that may have interest in that role, we would pursue it.
And
Okay,
we
so
may,
otherwise you assess whether you think if there's an updated study, you assess whether you think it's a good location, and then you reach out to developers and or investors. to
Well,
check
the
in?
developer would be involved in, the investor part of the equation. I would be visiting with the site owners, whether there are one or five. I would visit with those individuals and get familiar with those properties. And through those investigations, we would determine what the best site is to pursue.
Okay, but then I guess what, and I don't mean to be, you know, um, stupid, but once you look at something, you say, hey, that's a great site. How do we get from that point to a developer that's interested in it? Who's finding this developer? Or is there some site or something where this information is posted to
Yeah,
potential developers who are interested in hotel development?
right. We have several developers that we work with, and they would certainly come and work in that Winnebago market. So really, it's more a matter of me, if I can find somebody who's local and qualified, and there are any kind of connections. The local, situation is a great one. But if there isn't anybody, and I'm guessing might be a bit of a challenge to find somebody who's got the hospitality development in and around the general area. Of course, you've got other options in bigger areas in Illinois, and those could be options. I have talked to some folks about other markets that I might want to consider for Winnebago. But no, that would be my job to start, kind of exhaust the market in and around the area, and then yes, figure out who our developer would be for the project, of which again we have several that we can call on, who we work with already and have a history with.
Mary, if I could, this is Greg Hannes. I could jump in on this one a little bit too and share some light on how the puzzle gets put together. And I can give you some examples of how that happens in smaller markets, in markets like Winnebago, and how you get from point A to point Z to get the hotel open. It's like putting together a puzzle. It's Julie is right. I mean, I can give you examples of towns that there are people within the community. They can be doctors, they can be attorneys, they can be major business people, etc., that just want to leave a legacy to the city, and they see a need for a hotel, and they will put money in. Some will be long-term investors, investors. They will come up with the funding for it. It's again, putting together the entire puzzle is something that not only can Julie help you with, but we can help you with also. We have access to developers. We have access to ways that people are looking for markets, to build like a grand stay or whatever. And we can assist. We assist with communities. We work with communities all around the country, and this question is asked of us all the time. I'm working with one out in Iowa right now that they don't have a hotel for 40 miles around them, and they need a hotel. They have a very major manufacturer in town that works with John Deere, and they have to put people up 40 miles away and drive them back and forth. That manufacturer has a site on his plant where he has his manufacturing facility in the industrial park that he's wanting to put the land in, and he also will be an equity investor in developing the hotel because he sees the need for the community. We have another community in Nebraska where they are putting together a group of local investors, doctors, attorneys, business people in town. And quite honestly, they said, we don't need, a typical hotel investor might be looking for a 15, 18% return on investment, which is great. But these local people in this town are saying, all that we want is we want enough to preserve reserves so that we can keep the hotel fresh and updated down the road. We want to leave a legacy to the city because we know that we need a hotel in this city. And if we get a 7-8% return on the money, we'll flip that all around and put that all back into reserve for replacement of soft goods, hard goods, et cetera, down the road. They're not really looking for a return on the investment. They just want to leave a legacy to the city. So there's all different ways to put these puzzles together. And, that can be talked about in a lot more detail down the road.
Okay, thank you.
And you mentioned having local investors, and I know the last time we had the hotel feasibility study, there were some people in the area that were somewhat interested in possibly investing in a hotel. So if we do get to that point, we can make some suggestions of businesses and individuals that may want to be investors. So Julie, we could have a list of a few different names for you.
Okay, that would be great.
And Julie, this is Trustee Julie O'Rourke. I think you had mentioned you had 30 or 33 hotels. How many developers did you use for those 33? Was it just a handful did it end up being, or do you have 33 developers?
Gal. I know that we've had developers who have done more than one. And forgive me because I have known the president of this company for about 20 years, and he and I have done hotel developments previously, but I just officially took this role 3 years ago, so I can't really answer this question with total accuracy. There's definitely not 33. If I were to probably take a guess, I might say there's 20 to 25 different developers over the years.
Okay, well, I guess that's more than I would have expected. So, okay, thank you.
Well, and that's a shifting, of markets and areas and states, and there's just a lot of factors involved. And we try to find the fit for everything that's the best. So
Julie-
same thing in this case, and we would definitely take whatever, yes, Greg, you find out in the market for development options. That would be the place we would begin.
Julie, to just address that question that you just raised, there are people all over the place that are looking for investment. I relate the hotel development game to the game of Monopoly. If we've all played Monopoly, there are hotel investors out there, and the goal of playing the game Monopoly is to put a hotel on Boardwalk, right? We all want to get it on Boardwalk. Hotels have been a very attractive investment instrument. When I'm talking about 15, 18, 20% return on investment, that's what hotels typically deliver. You tell me where you can put your money and get a 15 to 20% return on investment. So there are people out there, and I've been doing this for over 45 years. I've seen a lot of people over the time, and quite honestly, they play the game of Monopoly. And they build one hotel and they go, wow, this is great. Let's build another hotel. And all of a sudden, 2 hotels become 4 hotels, become 6 hotels. And those hotel development companies and investment companies are out there. Julie has access to them. I have access to some. Some of them are the exact same ones that Julie has. And I'm, Winnebago, it may be a more regional type developer, somebody that's coming out of the regional area, 4 or 5 state regional area, that's just looking for a viable market that if the market demand justifies it, that's like buying up New York, St. James, and I forget what the other one is on Monopoly board, but getting that and then building the monopoly that you want. And I mean, that's the hotel development game that's out there.
Thanks for that
Trustee
analogy.
Mike,
Go ahead.
beyond the investment, potential investment in updating the hotel feasibility study, if that was done and it was deemed attractive to try to put something forward, what is the burden on the village and the village staff throughout this process?
And you're talking beyond the study.
beyond the study?
Okay. Really very little. I would tell you that again, I would, probably continue to communicate with Frank. And again, just look for any type of advice, anything that can be offered as I go through the steps. Um, of course, there would have to be a development agreement, put together. Any kind of city incentives would be negotiated and be part of that agreement, but those would be part of your normal meetings, approvals, etc. So I would not expect there to be much burden on you folks at all.
There's going to be questions about zoning, environmental impacts, issues that might relate to the site, those types of things that, again, like Julie said, can be mediated with within your city government structure and how those things get mediated. You once you know that there's viability for a hotel, now you're playing another analogy that I will say is that you're playing a game of poker with the developer. The developer is going to come to you and ask you, what kind of incentives can you give me? Can you give me room tax abatement for 3-5 years that will go into marketing the hotel? Is there TIF development incentives that could be there? Could you help us with any state grant for smaller community development, et cetera? That they might need to have some city recommendation or input that we would like to have this hotel here, and could you get some grant money or some other incentives from the state or regional economic development department within the state of Illinois? There's so many different ways to, again, the financing puzzle, you got to put it together. And there's conventional financing, there's equity money. We've already talked about the local investors, but then there can also be other types of incentives. The developer, I'll be honest with you, is going to come to you with a wish list of incentives. The city now plays poker with them and says, okay, what do we need to really get this thing developed? And that's where you're going to need some counseling. And it can come from a legal aspect with your attorney. It can come with, we've assisted with communities in assessing, is the demands of the developer realistic to get this property developed? If you do the update to the study, you're going to have a study that's going to be the property of the city. You can then share that with developers, but you're already going to know what at least the potential viability of that hotel is. And that's where you're going to have an inside track, as opposed to John Jones or Sue Jones coming to Winnebago and saying, we're going to build a Grand Stay Hotel at the corner of 5th and Main. We need some incentives to get the equity money, to get the incentives to build this. We've already done the feasibility study. You haven't seen the feasibility study. You won't see the feasibility study. You don't know how viable it is. With you doing the update to the study, you're going to have the study, the report in front of you to already know what the viability is. Now, there may be some tweaking to it as the developer develops the property further and maybe puts another bell or whistle into the hotel that might change the parameters, but you're really going to be within the ballpark of knowing how viable that property is, and that's going to help you from a city side to evaluate what do we have to give to get the hotel. Whereas if John or Sue Jones comes in and already has a feasibility study, you don't have that information. They're going to say, well, we need $2 million in incentives to get this hotel developed. being a smaller city or whatever, you may not have the wherewithal to come up with that type of incentive. You go into Chicago or you go into Milwaukee or Minneapolis, and you walk in and say, well, I need $1 million to develop this hotel. That's, okay, we got reserves or we got funds or whatever that we can put together an incentive package for that. It's not that big of a deal for them to come up with that kind of money.
And Greg, you made a good point that we would own that updated feasibility study, and that would give us an insight as to the value. And when we have any potential developers and investors asking for something, we know the value of that property and the value of the hotel and what types of incentives. So that is a benefit for us. And just for the trustees and for Attorney Gaziano, and to let you guys know, and I say we, meaning Sally Bennett, Jason Ackerman, and I attended a Region 1 planning seminar in the last month or two, and Attorney Gino Galuzzo was the speaker, and he talked about incentives. And he talked all about the incentives Greg mentioned plus more, and how they might be viable for one situation versus another. So we have that information, and if push comes to shove, I could get probably the slideshow from Attorney Galuzzo to show to the trustees. So we all have an idea of what type of incentives are out there and what may work best in the situation. So, we do have kind of a good idea of what incentives are available and what we can use and what can be in our toolbox. So if we do the updated study, we can look at the incentives and kind of have a plan and ahead of time as to what incentives we may want to look at to give to a possible developer. Any questions from anyone on for Greg or Julie, or anything else, Greg or Julie, that you think we may want to know?
Well, Julie mentioned this at the beginning. I mean, when we did the study back in 2017, we all know what happened in 19, 20, and 21 and 22. 19 and 20 were dismal years for hotels. Everything started back and is coming back with very strong. I would say that, we're in some very interesting times with economy and whatever, but hotels have always been a good long-term investment, and they've become a economic development tool for the community too. If you have a new hotel or hotel accommodations, that's one of the things that if you're trying to attract a company or some other type of investment to the community, many times a hotel, food and beverage, support services for residential, et cetera, but hotels are definitely part of the checklist that developers or that people that are moving to the community for economic development reasons look for, as far as whether or not they can support, they want to move to that community. That community that I told you about in Iowa, that company has been there. It's a family-owned company that has developed, and they had a very fantastic relationship with John Deere. But to be all honest with you, they have service technicians, they have sales representatives, they have all sorts of administrative people that come in from John Deere, et cetera, and they have no place to put them. They like dealing with the company, but the company actually said it's very difficult for us to really attract other businesses to this area because we don't have a hotel. We have to put people up 35, 40 miles away. So from an economic development standpoint, a new Grand Stay Hotel in Winnebago would become a very attractive economic tool for the community to go out and mark a checklist, and mark that off on your checklist. Yes, we have hotel accommodations to accommodate a new business moving to the Winnebago area. And I think that, what you're going to find, and we'd have to get into that, I'm sure that there have been some changes some significant changes or some minor changes that have occurred since 17 that have occurred in the area. And they can be companies that are increasing in activity, or there may be changes to the major employers in the area. But you also have to look at the social leisure components. What does your school district or your park district look for? Have you done anything with recreation? We've gone into communities where they put in a very attractive sports parks, softball, soccer, even indoor arenas. Rhinelander, Wisconsin now has 2 sheets of hockey ice, and they don't rely on snowmobilers and cross-country skiers anymore. Every weekend they have hockey and indoor softball competitions up in Rhinelander, literally running from December through March, and then they get into the summer season and they get the fishermen and the summer vacationers, etc. So if you have like a school that has a really neat gymnasium or sports fields or whatever, and you ask your park and rec or your school district and say, if we had a hotel here, could we sponsor tournaments? Now, if you sponsor tournaments, all of a sudden that brings in weekend travelers to go to your restaurants, to go to your stores, to go to, it brings economic energy to the community. So there can be a lot of things that have to be investigated as far as what is going to drive the Winnebago market in both social leisure and corporate commercial lodging demand into the area.
So I think I have a question then, and I'm a newbie, so bear with me. But if a feasibility study is paid for by the village, is that what I'm understanding? That's what we're talking about. So how much area does that cover? So let's say, and nothing to Julie here, but let's say Julie and her company decide we don't want to deal with Winnebago, but this is still a good idea. We're going to go just outside of Winnebago. What stops that, or is that a thing?
The feasibility.
Now that we paid for the
Right.
study.
Right, I mean, that's the thing, when you pay for the study, you have a document, and you decide who you want to give it to. And you can give it to various companies to say, hey, you're representing a brand of hotel, here it is. And they can look at it, and they will get the area information, and you're banking on the fact that they will want to build in the village limits. They may not. They may build right outside the village limits because there's it works out better to buy somebody else's property or build somewhere else. So they could use it for, the area, but typically the study is geared towards particular property, and it's going to identify 1, 2, 3, or 4 different sites in the village. So it won't really identify other sites outside the village.
Okay.
So the study, it could be used for outside, but it's not going to be as helpful because they won't know, okay, if it's outside the village, there may be some factors that weren't considered in the study. So I know, Greg, when you came out, Greg, to do it the last time, we rode out to the airport, the Rockford Airport. We rode around to see what was around the area. We rode through the village to see, who would use it, which businesses would use it, the school, the athletic facilities that are within 15 minutes up here. And there's one in downtown Rockford. There's the convention or the BMO Harris Bank Center where all the events occur in downtown Rockford. That's 15 minutes away. So we toured that, and I know you had that in the study, and that allowed for really a little bit larger hotel to be built for the size of our village, because we have the city of Rockford and the attractions to all the various places in the city of Rockford and nearby. So, those things would be in the updated report, but we also have a new venue for weddings that is very popular. That's just outside the village limits. It's within 2 miles of the village limit. And that would be another, an investor possibly, they might want to invest some money in a hotel because they're looking for places for their people to go stay. And number two, it would allow for more users at a hotel because they would be going to weddings and other events. And we've had, we've had other things, alumni come back for events where they need to stay places. So, so I think we would have the ability for an update to add some things to the old study that weren't there that would allow for, a developer to look at it and say, yeah, there's even more now than there was before.
That's
And
what
I'm sorry, I would agree with that point. And no, folks, that we're going to defer to what Greg comes up with in the study for sites. We're not gonna we're not gonna wander off. We're gonna follow the instructions.
Okay. Thanks,
you,
Julie, for that.
the fact that you have Julie saying that she has someone that would be somewhat interested if the updated study comes back positive, that's, that's a jump start. I mean, we go into a lot of communities that don't even have that. And, we suggested a field research analysis report, which is, I think, probably what you need for a community like yours at this point. That's what we did, I think, the last time. And I think that's going to be a very important document that you're going to be able to use. But if Julie already has someone that they can go to and say, would you like to build a grand stay in Winnebago? And here we got an updated report. That's, that's something more than what a lot of communities have. I talked to a community in Virginia today, and they wish that they had a developer that would be, but they don't have a hotel, and they know that they need a hotel. And they're starting from scratch, so to speak, and trying to piece the puzzle together. But we can already bring somebody to the table. That's a pretty big jump start.
And the other piece of the puzzle that we didn't have before is we do have some village-owned property that we did not have before that could be a place
Yes.
for a hotel. So that could be part of the incentives that the village is involved with is the land and the connection fees and things like that. So again, an update to the study would include some very new things and very positive things that may be attractive to a potential developer.
Right.
Absolutely.
Any other questions from anyone here that have any questions for Greg or Julie?
And
any
we're
last-
available, folks, in the future. If something comes up that you'd like to discuss, you can feel free to reach out.
Anytime.
All right.
Yeah, this has been helpful.
Thank you both for joining tonight. I know it was quick notice. I just gave you 48 hours or less to do it, but again, we appreciate your flexibility in joining the meeting tonight.
Yes, you bet.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you.
And we hope that we can work with you again.
All right, sounds good. We'll
Yes.
talk to you soon.
Yep.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. I don't know if the committee wants to discuss further, right now about this, or if you want to, have time to think about it and bring it up at the next community development meeting about the feasibility study. But I just want to make sure that we had a forum for them to give information so we could at least consider it. And now that we recorded it, anybody can go back and listen to it, to see what they had to say.
What does it cost? I don't even know. I wasn't here for that, so.
Right, so Greg had given us a couple of options, but his suggested option was a field research hotel evaluation report. And that would cost a total of $8,250. Now, I don't think it would change from when he gave it to us before, because it's not been that long ago. This was back in August 1st. If it's gone up, it'll go up just probably a little bit. He would ask for 50% down as a retainer, and then obviously the balance due upon completion. And the complete field research hotel evaluation report would include all associated research expenses, the field research stage, and then he says in the process of performing the fieldwork portion of this report or in conducting the preliminary research, should the feasibility of a project become questionable, we will cease the project work and discuss our findings with you accordingly. Should it be necessary to cease all further work at this point, we will adjust our fees accordingly. That's just in the price portion, but in the what they're going to do, this study is used by communities and developers to identify the preliminary need for the hotel in the market. They'll look at comprehensive research, the research proposed site being considered for hotel development, including its visibility and accessibility to proposed markets, relationship of the site to possible lodging demand generators and existing lodging supply will be researched. They'll do projections for occupancy, average daily room rate, room revenues, total revenues will be presented. These preliminary projections will be to a stabilized year of operation. Preliminary recommendations for hotel site location, product types and sizes, franchise branding recommendations, and product features and amenities will be provided for each hotel. They'll also have a preliminary operational pro forma. I think Julie Brown mentioned the pro forma when she first was discussing the procedure. It'll be developed based upon the sales revenue projections and a national hotel industry operational expense averages for the style of each hotel being considered. And that is what developers will want to look at, the room size, what the operational pro forma will be. It's not the full comprehensive hotel market study that we had done before. It's going to be in an abbreviated format that summarizes the research performed. And it'll be for us to distribute. So we don't need their authorization to give it to anybody. It's going to be our product once it's done. And it can be expanded by HMI in various ways. So if we feel we need to expand it, we can. Greg did talk before about if a particular developer came in and wanted some specific information, that we could contact Greg to have it done, and we would most likely ask the developer to pay for that because it's something that they need to know for themselves specifically. It would not be something that we could give out to other developers because it may not apply to them. So that's what the cost would be.
Hey, Frank, in that case where the developer pays for their special thing, do we get the results of that for our negotiating, or is it going to go just to them then?
I think it may just go to them. So that would be something we could negotiate is we may pay part of that, we may not, but we would want to have that report so that we could see it. But that would be a negotiating thing. They may ask us to pay for it because they may say, well, that's an incentive we want. If you pay for it, then we'll let you see it. But, so that's a negotiating thing. But we would want to work with the developer that's asking for it to at least see if we can get a copy of it. Obviously, if we paid for it, we would get access to it, but we could still negotiate access to it. So, I brought this to the board before, and I guess it was prematurely because I did not have all of this information. I still think it's something that we as a village should look at investing the $8,250. I think we have the space, we have the sites for it. I think we have obviously the location off of 20 for it. And being right outside of Rockford, I think there would be good use of a hotel. And what Julie said is the only reason she reached out to me is because there's a developer, a contractor that has been to Winnebago many times. And I don't know if this contractor lives in and around Winnebago or just visits Winnebago regularly. But seemed to me that when that person reported back, said that that person felt very strongly there should be a hotel here. And so that leads me to believe, and with Julie still pressing, that they really feel that this might be a good fit for Grand Stay and they want to take a stronger look, and they can't do anything more until they have such a study. And it's typical for the municipality to go out and have this study done. I didn't look to see where it would come out of in community development, but I would imagine we do have funds available in community development for this type of an expense.
Thoughts, Jason?
It's just, I thought Sally would pipe in there.
Mike, any thoughts?
I guess I was not a strong proponent of it in the past. I guess I'm kind of a teeter-tottering at this point. I guess Frank brings a potentially valid thing. The wedding services out south of town, maybe that's a driver behind it, but we probably also lose points in the fact that we really don't have restaurants in town, and one of the bigger ones that we had, we've lost. We don't have a situation as described by Gary as far as a big company that probably houses lots of people that would be, to their benefit to have somebody in town to house people. So, I still struggle to try to see the likelihood of somebody building a hotel in Winnebago.
We do have a chemical company north of town near Dickerson. Anita Targos, a former trustee, used to work there. Now she works in their California plant. The name escapes me right now. It's a large, Thermo Fisher. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I believe, they may have been in our study, but I believe they at times are looking for places for people to stay that are visiting, and they have to stay in Rockford. Now, with the erection of the new hotel in downtown Rockford, that would put them a little closer, but if there was one in Winnebago, I'm sure that would be their first choice. And so we'd want to reach out to them and say, do you have a need for a hotel? Do you have a need for, a place for people to stay when they're coming? Because they may have, people in their corporate, body that will come in and visit, and they may, have accountants that come in and do accounting or do whatever, and they need a place to stay for a day or a couple days.
I know in the machine shop I worked at in Peck, we'd have that, and they had to stay on the east side of Rockford, so
Right.
there is that.
And that's what I was thinking too.
Those are
Is,
small.
yeah, Pecatonica and Durand, if there are any companies out that way, there really aren't a lot of hotels unless you go to the Rockton area or you go to the east side of Rockford.
What about Freeport? They have?
Freeport has a hotel.
Okay.
But it's more towards the west, I guess, or the north side of Freeport. So.
Hey, Frank, I know you're in talks with some other development business-wise, and I know you're limited on what you can say, but do these things jibe or no?
Well, if we're looking at village property, we may or may not, because I think Julie said 1.5 to 2 acres maybe is what they're looking at. We have one parcel of 1.5 acres that we would have. We have, the 13 plus acres may or may not be dedicated to a potential buyer. And so if that fell through, then we would have, obviously, a lot of property for a hotel to be in. But the
Yeah, I
other
think
thing,
what I really was talking about is a bigger company that might need the hotel space. Is that the type of person that you've been in talks with?
this one would have employees, and I don't know the exact business, but it's possible that it could have people coming to visit. It's more of a shop where they're going to manufacture things. But again, that type of place could attract other business people, whether it's buyers of the product or whatever, like Ann Peck had people.
Yeah, we had, your auditors, your accounting, your and even customers would come stay. We were small. It was often, but
So, that type of business could attract. I don't know about Micron, if they, have anybody that comes in, but, again, they might be a similar situation. And as Greg pointed out, the school district, the boys basketball team and even the girls basketball team have had success over the years. And if we had a hotel, they could be looking at having tournaments, whether it's shared with Pecatonica, whether it's just hosted by Winnebago. We could start looking at hosting a tournament and having people stay at a hotel here. That's something we've not had the ability to do before. And we could do, whether it's a track meet or other things, I mean, there are things that it could lend itself, to do more things like that.
And Frank, I don't remember if the prior study addressed it or not, but how many days that a given hotel would need to be filled or mostly filled in order to be profitable. I just think of the one downtown Rockford where I pass every day on the way to work. And there are times that that parking lot is full and there's times that there are 2 cars. So, there must be some sort of study or investigation they do, because no hotel is going to have somebody all the time.
Right, and that's what the study shows is the percentage, I believe, of occupancy, the estimated or average occupancy, probably leaning more towards the weekend for the social events and more during the week for the business type of things. But that's what the study is supposed to develop, is what is believed to be the occupancy, the average occupancy. And I don't know if they do it over an annual period, if they do it over a monthly period, or they do like a weekend versus weekday period to say, like, during the week, we believe it's going to be 25% occupied, and on the weekend, 85% occupied. But I know when the original study was done, Greg said that you really needed to have a pool because the market here was going to be for a family more so than a business person. So you wanted to market it towards a family. He also, I believe, said before that you'd want to do some suites. And when I talked to Julie, she said, yes, they want to do various suites. They want to do, some different size rooms, but I think also gearing it a little bit more towards a family visit. So I think all of that would be in the study as to what Greg believes is going to be the most viable type of hotel for our area after he, updates it.
Well, to Mike's point though, I don't know that we're doing this a little, I get putting one in, we're on Highway 20. That's why I asked about outside of the village then. How come it hasn't been done before or, outside of here? There had to be studies or something done, you would think, anywhere along 20.
Well, not necessarily, but I will tell you that First Midwest Group, who does own property here, they were looking at putting up hotels, and they're looking more towards the bigger market. They're looking towards Riverside. They're looking towards McChesney Park. They're looking towards Rockford. And, Sunil is looking towards where they're going to make the most profit. And he mentioned, we're having a hard enough time out on trying to do it on Riverside. And this was before they had Hard Rock Cafe going into Rockford, but they were looking at Riverside in 90. And so, when you look at First Midwest Group, they probably themselves are looking at Winnebago as a market for a hotel. They're looking at a bigger market because they can't. We as the village can't move our village. So we have to say, okay, do we believe that this is a possible place for?
But and that's where I was going with that. To Mike's point, we are not a destination yet. We don't have the things. We lost a restaurant. We don't have a reason to come here. So you're only getting, unless it would be sports related, I get that. But otherwise that's the traffic on 20, or the small shop, machine shops or anything like that. But it's a little bit backwards because we're not the destination yet.
Right. In order to get a hotel, you need to have a person go out there and contact hotel companies. We don't have that resource. We don't have the ability to go out there and say, all right, Representative for Holiday Inn, we want you to come out here and we want you to build. we don't have that. So we depend on someone like Julie from a hotel company, a smaller one, to say we are interested and we have a possible developer, someone that believes it should be there. If you can give us a study that tells us what we can build and what return it's going to give us, then we can go out there and find the investors and bring it to you. When we have somebody like that, and when Greg, we didn't have that the first time we did this study. And the original study was paid for by the county because we asked for money from the county and, you know, they'd given hundreds of thousands of dollars to other communities from their tipping fee, and we only ended up getting, what, $8,000 or $10,000 for the original study. You know, so we didn't pay for it ultimately. But I think it's a necessary tool because if we have someone that's interested, I think this is an investment of $8,000 that could turn into a lot more. We've put in $5,000 for a grant that we have never received. We've put in probably over the years more than $60,000 in grant fees for grants we've never received. All with the idea that we want to put a grant application together because we might get some money
Yeah, I get that.
for something. So this is what we're doing. We're putting it into a possible future investment. And we're not the ones that are putting it up. We're the ones that are saying, here, come here, here's our study. Anyone that wants to look at the study, we'll give it to you. You developer, you go out there and you do this, but here's the information that you're going to need to attract your investors.
And a hotel could lead to the other things.
To a restaurant, because
Yes.
if you've got a hotel, you may get a restaurant. And so, you know, it's the chicken or the egg, which comes
Yes.
first. You know, if you have a restaurant, yeah, that may bring a hotel. If you have a hotel, that may bring a restaurant. If you have a hotel, it's more likely going to bring a restaurant than just have a restaurant come in right now. And, you know, so that's a risk that we, as a village, have to decide, do we want to take? And in my personal opinion, I believe it's a risk that, an expenditure that we should take. You know, when we're looking at a budget of $1.5 million a year, you know, I would say $8,200.
Right.
I would spend that in 1 year to possibly get a hotel here. If we don't get a hotel, okay, we don't, but maybe it puts it out there that maybe another hotel will come along in the next year. Maybe they'll look at the study and say, hey, maybe we're interested.
That was my next question, Frank. How long is a study really viable? Like a year, 2 years?
Yeah, I would say probably up to 2 years, I think, and then at some point you have to look at, okay, has anything changed? You know, and that's where we would ask Greg, you know, that question. We could say, okay, Greg, how long is this study good for? And he would say, you know, whether it's 1 or 2 years or whatever, and then he might, yeah, I mean, we could find out from him, you know, what that length of time is.
The only other question I wanted to ask, but I didn't know if it was appropriate, was what is the typical negotiations like? I mean, are we going to be giving up revenue for the next 10 years like Sullivan's to get them to come, or?
Well, you really didn't give it up because if they didn't exist, you wouldn't have got it anyways.
True, I guess. So it still hurts every darn time I look at the financials.
But I respect that, but if they wouldn't have built it without it, but it still does provide, you know, the community a place to shop. And, you know, and again, once we do, and we're probably within a year of having that hurdle complete, then the revenue does start to kick in.
Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, I couldn't put the two and two together on this whole hotel thing, but as the more I listen to it and it sinks in and some of the other things, I think it's probably worth the $8,000. You're right, Frank. We put money out to do grants and we don't get anything for it. It's just kind of a shot in the dark. This, at least there's some economics behind it. I mean, there is some viability here, and that study will bear out how much, right? So.
And I would think the burden on the village probably would be comparable to whatever the burden on the village was when Sullivan's was being developed, would be my gut. Because again, once somebody starts to create development, if we're not on the hook to try and find investors and everything, I would assume that would be analogous to Sullivan's.
Right. And, you know, again, there are many different incentives that we can give. And, the one that we gave for Sullivan's only affected the village revenue. It did not affect property taxes. So the school district, gets about 67% of all the property tax in the village, they still get their property tax. So Sullivan's was a great thing for the school district because it did not bring any children to the schools, which cost more money, but it brought in revenue to the schools and the other taxing bodies. So for them, it was a win. For the village, it was a temporary loss in that we didn't get that sales tax, but overall, it's a win to the village because we're gaining all of this business and, we're supporting that local business. So I think, you look at the incentive and, I think overall that one worked for the village and I think we could come up with something for a hotel developer, And again, Sally, Jason, and I learned a lot of different things. There are so many possibilities. It just really depends on what's going to work for the developer and what seems to work best for us. And sometimes you can pull in the other taxing bodies and tell them, hey, look, you need to give up some of the money for the next 2 or 3 years, but look, you're going to get it down, the next 50 years. So,
And I think the difference too from when we did this before is that this is the first time that we've had somebody that says, I potentially have someone interested or I'll go out and find people. As I recall, initially it was that, okay, village, now go find us investors. And that's where we got stuck.
exactly, Mary, that's it. And so with the idea that there is a potential developer and investor, that makes me want to move forward on this quickly because I don't want that person to say, well, here we go with the Village of Winnebago again. They take way too long to do anything. I'm going to not waste my time anymore. And I don't want to lose that opportunity. And again, it's an opportunity. It doesn't mean it's a slam dunk, but it's a chance for us to try and get a hotel here. And I can tell you, you talk to any resident or any business owner here, if we tell them we've got a hotel coming, they'll be happy. So, it's not as though we have another business coming in that some may say, I don't want that business here. I don't see anyone objecting to a hotel. So it's something that I think we, would get support locally. And I don't think that we would get any pushback from our residents that we're paying 80, some $100 for this study to potentially have a hotel come
So
here.
what do we have to do to move it? What do you want to do now?
The question is are we prepared to bring this from committee
That's what it is.
to the board meeting, which we could for next week? Yeah. As a coming from committee, a recommendation to say we should, okay, the village to spend $8,250 to do this hotel feasibility study, or the other, I guess, option would be it wouldn't come from committee, but we could still, when it came to community development, we could still discuss it as a whole and still vote on it at the meeting.
Correct.
That's kind of where we're at right now. Mike, do you feel like you want a little more time to think this over before voting on it, like tonight versus?
I am still undecided, and obviously all we would be doing is recommending to the committee that we would suggest passing it. Obviously it takes the other 3 voters, so just because we would support it at the committee doesn't mean it's a slam dunk to go forward. But to move the thing along, I would make a motion that we do bring this to committee and have a board recommendation for approval of the $8,250.
I would second.
All right. Roll call.
Any discussion?
Oh, any discussion regarding this?
I know we've had a lot of discussion, but the only thing that I would mention is I wouldn't be just watching what happens in downtown Rockford. I wouldn't be overly concerned with the lack of restaurants because if you see where the location is of the new hotel downtown, there are no significant restaurants for the people to go to there anyway, and they have to go elsewhere. And I think people would feel safer in the village of Winnebago than they do in the location where that new hotel is.
But the hotel does have a restaurant in it, although limited.
It does. It does,
Yeah.
but limited, but not for people to just like walk out and go to a restaurant. It's not real safe there.
No, I mean, I agree, Mary, that I think that the location and safety is much better in Winnebago. I mean, especially since there's already been a shooting right in front of that hotel since they've opened.
The rooftop is really nice, though. The rooftop restaurant is really
Oh.
nice.
That's what I heard, Julie. I was supposed to go to an event, invited as village president right when it opened, but then the pandemic hit, so they couldn't have that event, so I've not had a chance to go up there.
And just an FYI, I know I'm not on the committee, but I just looked at the budget since that question did come up. I know in 701 and 1747, 701, we have 50,000 budgeted just for community development. That's the line item. And we say potential land purchases. So there's money there. There's 20,000 in legal, there's money.
Yeah, and Sally Bennett also, she typed it in there that we have 50,000 available in that line item, and then that we also have the ARPA money that is yet to be assigned. So thank you, Sally.
Thanks, I didn't see it.
Any further discussion? All right, no further discussion. We'll have a roll call. Trustee Ackerman?
Yes.
Trustee McKinnon?
Yes.
Trustee Pearson says yes. All right. Moving on to the agenda, we'll go back to number 6, Region 1 Land Bank, IGA.
I'm not as prepared on this one. I had planned to prepare earlier this afternoon, but it got sidetracked on a different project. I don't know if you have a copy of the IGA or if it was not distributed. Okay.
I don't know that
If you want, we could set this over
Okay.
to the next
That
meeting,
sounds-
and what
yeah.
we'll do is I can send it out to everybody and then have a little more preparation time.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Next item up is playground update, number 8 on the agenda. And I wanted to bring this up just for the fine fact that I think Mike brought up a really good point in saying, we need to get something figured out, but how do we figure out what we want to spend $150,000 on? Especially being that we have multiple parks here in town and we don't want to duplicate things. So I was trying to just get a kind of everybody's feelings on how should we go forward with either, having somewhat of a open forum for community members or something along those lines to figure out what to do for this playground update, only because the park definitely needs to be updated and we need to make a move sometime, especially with those ARPA funds that we have. I don't want to do it hastily, but I do think we need to figure out at least a plan going forward on how to figure out what equipment we want and what updates we want to make.
Mike had mentioned a subcommittee, I believe, and Frank, I talked to you a little about, you had mentioned to update all the parks at once, maybe consider that. I reached out to Michelle Cunningham, who's Park District. She had done a lot of legwork on the splash pad, so I have that information. I haven't looked it over yet, so I didn't
That's
put that to committee, but she might be one to have on a subcommittee, I would think, Mike.
We had a meeting several times where we had Michelle Cunningham, Chad, Public Works Director, Sally Bennett, Kelly.
Then Kelly, yeah, she did a lot
Simons,
of work.
and I were involved. And in one of those meetings, we met with some people from the church near the lighted softball diamond, because they were interested in investing some funds if we were going to develop that park over there, the Herb Young Memorial Park. So my suggestion would be that, yes, we have Michelle Cunningham, Chad, Sally Bennett and Kelly would also like to be involved. I know they were
Yeah.
very strongly involved in getting us all the information. I would be willing to attend that meeting, those meetings as well. And I don't know if anybody from community development wants to attend and be part of that group. But I think, what Jason said is it'd be nice to have a comprehensive plan for all of our parks. Oh, and I was also thinking either Will Hartshee from the school or somebody else on behalf of the school, since they have their playground equipment. Because we want to really have input from everyone who has playground equipment, park, school, and village, and get ideas of an overall concept throughout the village.
Now, I did talk to Michelle about, as far as pricing, Kelly's got it nailed on, it's all relatively the same.
But I do have, this is one of the updated
Yes.
books of that's a 2023.
Michelle, I started saying, she was saying, throwing some prices out there that she had looked at, what things we were talking, they all were in line with what Kelly found here. So I don't know that it's a pricing for different companies issue as much as trying to get a plan for all the parks. And then maybe we could put together some kind of, a timeline. This much gets done this year, this much next year, as far as budgeting for it down the road.
I just know that this park, though, Memorial Park here has been, they've looked at some of the equipment and said that it is unsafe. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that to me, as committee, or as being village trustees, that's an unsettling thing that we have children that are playing on equipment that's been deemed unsafe. So I think that kind of needs to be addressed first. The unsafe stuff, it's you gotta get that replaced. That's just part of being, a trustee and making sure that the kids are safe,
But one thing to note is that you cannot just, if you do anything to any of the parks, they have to become ADA compliant. I did look that up. So it's all or nothing.
Yeah. But I think this is the first part that needs to be addressed,
Yes.
is what I was saying. I think it's a great idea to look at all the parks and say, okay, this is long-term what we want to do, but I think that's what we
Just
need
to have a plan.
Yeah, but
We can have
So it doesn't
ideas of the other parks, but focus on Memorial.
Memorial Park because of, I just don't, I think that's an unsettling thing to say we have unsafe equipment for children to play on, that's.
Agreed.
The other thing we'll look at as the committee is looking at ways to raise money, whether it be having companies donate items in exchange for advertising or signage, donating money, things like that. We can go out. I know that certain hospitals have donated for parks in the past in the area, so we might be able to reach out to them, especially Mercy Health, since they have a facility here. So that's the other thing I would like them to focus on at this meeting is maybe raising funds or getting donations and how we would do that.
At the committee.
At the committee, at this subcommittee, yeah. So if
I just was more or less wanting to get just throw this out here and see what we need to do the next step. I think a subcommittee is a great idea. We just need to get things kind of rolling. Yeah, exactly.
So what we can do is we can have Kelly send out an invitation for a meeting to all of these people. And what I'll do is have her include anyone that's on community development as well.
Yeah.
That way you'll know what's going on, and if anyone wants to attend, that person can attend. If we have more than two, we're going to have to post the meeting, which is not a problem. We just need to know in advance we're going to have, more than two from the committee. But we can get that started, right away.
Yeah.
With getting that meeting set up.
All right, any further discussion? All right, we're gonna go ahead and move to number 9, special event application. Did you have anything for this, Frank?
No, we did have feedback from a couple of organizations. that attempted to fill it out, and they said it was
Too
sort of
cumbersome,
difficult, too
correct.
cumbersome. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take it back, take a look at it. Yeah, it is. And see if we can maybe shrink it down a little bit, or have two packets, one for major events and one for some of the smaller events. So that'll be sent back to Village President Eubank for further amending and working on, and then I'll resubmit it back to the committee.
Alrighty, any further discussion on that? If not, we will go to number 10, electric charging station. Wondered if there was any updates. Frank, do you have any sort of updates from
The grant that,
Yeah,
okay, the company that was going after the grant, Blink, I believe.
Yeah.
Kelly reached out to them, and ultimately when they submitted their applications, they did not include the Village of Winnebago.
Okay.
So we are not in their grant, so any grant they receive will not come to the Village of Winnebago. They will not be coming here with the electric charging stations. So really, if we as a village want it to come here, it's either gonna be through a private industry like Sullivan's, if they wanna have them in their own parking lot, or Family Dollar or anybody else, so be it. Hotel, exactly.
Yeah.
If we as a village want it, then we would have to go out, and we can contract with Blink. We get a 30% discount off their regular rate. We can do our own. Or there may be some funding through ComEd, or there may be another thing coming down the line that will allow for the village to receive some funds to offset the cost. So that's really where I think we should be, is looking at ComEd or other grants that come from the state or federal government that would allow the village to apply itself for funding.
And that was one of the biggest things that we talked about, was we didn't want to have to, have our village employees, dealing with all this, sort of stuff. We were like, if we could get a grant, somebody else maintains them, but we have them, we just didn't want the cost coming from, that was kind of the biggest thing. So, thank you for that.
And can I ask Frank, as to the Blink, was it a matter of timing, or that after assessing the sites, they just determined that it wouldn't be good to be in Winnebago?
My understanding from Kelly's email was that it wasn't the timing, it was just the various locations and municipalities they wanted to use. It ended up the Village of Winnebago did not, it wasn't a good fit, I guess, because they had one from each region. And I believe they went with someplace else in our region other than us.
Got it.
I don't know why. I know that part of it was that there was not another EV charging station within 10 miles. Well, I don't know if Byron's within 10 miles or not, but they have some EV charging stations. So that may have been something new that, made us not as good of a choice. But I know there were some factors that they had to look at, and so they might have felt that the village was not as strong of a candidate for that region.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion? If not, moving on to number 11, video gaming application Bago Lounge. So that was just sent out today, and I didn't get a chance to read that over.
Looked fine to me. What happens with that?
Well, the idea is it needs to come to the board for approval. And, all right.
That's why I wondered how it ends up here.
It comes through here because this is the committee that a lot of times Liquor Commission will come through community development, and then it goes to the board.
And I can tell you, I looked at the application itself for video gaming, and it is legally sufficient. It meets all of the requirements that we have for that. They had to first show that they were able to get their video gaming license from the state, which they have shown.
I would like to that we recommend the resolution.
If you could state that again, Mike, you kind of cut off.
I would like to make a motion that we bring this to the board approval and recommend approval of this resolution.
I will second that.
Any discussion?
Any discussion or any further discussion on this? Hearing none, roll call. Trustee McKinnon,
Yes.
trustee Ackerman,
Yes.
and trustee Pearson says yes. So that's approved. Number 12, Memorial Park Bench, Burkhart family. I just wanted to make sure that we were, not so much discussion on this, but this kind of goes along with the playground update, that I didn't want this to get lost in the mix, that we were okay with the family putting that bench in, but it had to be part of the overall, I guess, design of the park, and had to fit in there.
Yeah, we have previously approved accepting the bench from the family, and we've discussed this in Public Works, and Public Works is prepared to do one of two things, either to put it in place temporarily and then remove it when the park is being reconstructed and factor that into the design, or simply to hold that in storage until we are ready to integrate it with a future design.
Perfect, thank you so much, Mike. I did not know that, so thank you for that update. Any further discussion on that? If not, we'll move on to number 13, which is permitting of chickens. So, I guess there's been quite a few, people within the village that have called, the village looking or asking if there's an ordinance, to have chickens within the village limits. And, it looks like we don't have an actual ordinance on chickens.
Other animals.
Other animals, yes, but nothing specifically with chickens. So Kelly printed out a couple, different, municipalities. I have like Des Plaines, Village of Bradley, which is, by Kankakee, and some of their, ordinances and whether or not they allow chickens, and just wanted to bring this up and kind of get everybody's feedback on the committee on what our thoughts are, and if we want to, take something to the board about, being okay with having chickens within the village, or if we just want to take this to our next meeting and kind of discuss it as a whole.
I personally think we probably need something to be definitive whether it is allowed or not allowed. And my personal opinion is I would not be in support of chickens within the village limits in the residential area.
So Mary, that's what I was gonna ask you, Mary, is I know as a board, we've always said you can't have chickens, and it may not be specifically stated in an ordinance, but is it in any type of zoning or anything like that where the inference is you can't have chickens?
That's as I recall. This came up several years ago, but only for one family inquired, and I had issued an opinion, and I'll just have to go back and look at that. I did see this on the agenda, but you may or may not know, I broke my ankle about a week ago, so I'm a little bit on slow mode, unfortunately. But I will look that up because I gave an interpretation that basically said you couldn't have chickens, and I had reasoning behind it. So I will certainly forward that to everyone because it's not my normal memo. So I should be able to find it through my X1 system and then we can go from there. But I do recall, and it wasn't a straight ordinance, but there was something that led me to that said, no, you can't have chickens. The other thing, and again, this doesn't have to do with whether we have it or do or do not have it, but I just would be interested to know from a vermin sort of perspective. I just see things posted not just here but other places. Naturally, some people like it for the laying of the egg, whatever the one a day each chicken does, but then others talk about infestation of rats, and certainly we don't want to encourage that if that truly is something that happens.
And that's the primary basis for my opinion.
I agree with Mike there, yes.
So I think, you know, if Mary, you could send that out to us, because I think I
Okay.
remember you
Yeah,
stating that before.
I'll never find it right now, but I did read where we have something about other animals. I can't remember. So if we make one for chickens, I mean, where does it stop? So does that one cover that somehow? We should read that again.
So, yeah, I mean, you're right, Jason. We need to look at the other one.
Where would it stop on any animal?
Right. So, I mean, it says you can't have cows and pigs. but,
Exactly.
You know,
But if somebody's like, oh, I'm gonna have a deer,
Right.
you know, or I'm gonna have, you know,
Right.
some sheep or goats.
So we
you
should
know.
read that again.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. So Mary, in your search, if you can pull up whatever ordinances we have that cover animals that are allowed and animals that are not allowed,
There is one
Okay.
I read.
then we can consider that. And then the committee can review that and decide where we need to go from there. But, you know, Drew, I think you were bringing up the point of, do we need to have an ordinance no matter what? And we should have something that clearly states the village's intention. And, you know, again, whether the committee or the board wants to have some type of forum, whether the board just wants to say, you know what, if our attorney's opinion says the village already says you can't have it, we're just going to make it into an ordinance so it's clear, we're not changing anything, we're just making it clearer, that's fine. You know, whatever the committee and board wants to do, that's fine, but, you know, just need to figure out what's the right approach. How do you?
Yeah, because I feel like, you know, the employees here at the village are getting phone calls, you know,
I
or
agree.
people are sending emails, and they have to continue to say, well, you know, we don't really have a, you know, I want it for them too, so that it's very like black and white, there's no gray zone, and they're like, nope, this is the, you know.
That's all
it says. Yeah, so that,
I'm just saying, does it say barn animals or something? I can't remember what it reads.
I just want to make it easier for everybody, and then, you know, it can be posted so that the people of the village know, no, you can't have chickens, like, you know, because it falls under this category, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on chickens? If not, we'll move to number 14, 4th of July committee. I just wanted to bring this up, that essentially we don't really have a 4th of July committee any longer. It's kind of dissolved. And the question is that something we want to look at trying to revamp and reconvene a new 4th of July committee, or is that something that we just want to just kind of make part of, you know, community development? Or I was just looking for kind of suggestions, because I think the last kind of members kind of just.
And let me jump in here and just give you my thought. You know, the 4th of July committee, I believe, was originally put together, and it was of members inside and outside the village. And it was for the family festival. And we don't have the family festival anymore. And that is really what took all the planning. We had to plan the acts, we had to plan, you know, who was gonna be where. I think the planning for a parade and the planning for fireworks doesn't take all that much. You know, we've done it on, you know, we've done it like with a week before, we did the, you know, after the pandemic hit, we came back and we decided to do the fireworks again and the parade. We actually
You
hit
just
them
said line up. Yeah, you're like line up, and if you want to be in the parade.
Right, and, you know, volunteers, okay, you know, there were 10 of us that volunteered to do the parade route. So I don't know that we need a committee right now for 4th of July. If we we're looking at a family festival, we would want to have a separate committee do that, because that's a lot of time and effort, and I wouldn't want to task this committee to do it. But if we're just putting together the parade, I think this committee could okay the fireworks and okay the parade.
And the only, the only reason I bring this up is because Nancy, with Nancy's Diner had approached me shortly after, Don had resigned and said, oh, you're the new chairman, I wanted to meet with you, and it ended up being an hour and a half long meeting on everything that she wanted to do. She wanted to bring back the festival, she wanted to close down streets, she wanted to have, all this stuff. And we had given her that special application to fill out, and I was like, this is gonna be so much undertaking, for myself, but then I don't know if that's kind of faded away or she's kind of like stepped back, because I haven't heard from her in months. Like we were emailing back and forth, and then I haven't heard from her. So I was trying to see because she literally had like stuff that she had planned out. She had volunteers, who was gonna volunteer, what you know what I mean? Like, and we're gonna have these vendors on Main Street during the parade, and I was like, this is way too much, you know what I mean? So I was just wondering, but now, like I said, I haven't heard from her, but, if she did come back within, a month or so, because spring is around the corner, I just want to kind of know what our plan was, and if she wanted to do that, then that's fine, but she's gonna have to do the undertaking, not say, well, it's community development now, everybody's got to pick up the slacks for this, you know what I mean? So
this is how I would look at it. July 4th is coming up. If an organization wants to have an event on the 4th of July, it's like any other organization, whether it's the Jingle and Mingle or anything else, they would need to come to the village ahead of time with a plan and what they're going to be doing and why they need certain roads closed and what, who they're going to need and that kind of thing. And we would have to then take a look at it and approve it. I would be very skeptical that we would have enough time to have anyone come forward between now and 4th of July and present something that could move forward.
I agree 100%.
So yeah, I don't think we need to go out there and look for people to form a 4th of July committee.
Okay.
I think if people want to form one on their own and do what was done before for a festival, great. And then they can come to the village and they can say, hey, we have this proposal. This is what we're going to do.
Hey, Frank and Drew, I don't want to cut off the conversation, but I'm about 15 minutes past due for an appointment. Is there anything that's absolutely essential that, that we cover while I'm still here before I step away?
Nope. Just one question, Mike. Any new business or anything that you'd like to bring forth for the next meeting, or anything that we need to discuss?
No, nothing new. Obviously, the main issue that as we've already talked quite a bit about, is a little subcommittee for the playground equipment. Beyond that, I think we pretty much touched base on all the issues that I'm aware of.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okie doke. Are you going to cover anything, or are we going to be wrapping up?
Nope, we're wrapping up.
Okay, then I'll hang on just for another minute or two here.
Items for the next meeting, we voted on 2, didn't we?
Yeah, we're bringing the hotel feasibility.
Sorry.
No. The hotel feasibility, and then
The gaming.
The gaming, yes.
And that would be it.
Yep. And then does February 20th or 27th work for you, Mike, for a meeting, like the next meeting, because they want it, before the next board meeting?
The 20th would be okay. The 27th would be a conflict.
Okay. We should plan for the 20th then of February for the next meeting. Is that okay with you?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Number 17, executive session. We have nothing to go into executive session. So number 18, I need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. I second it.
Any discussion? If not, roll call. Trustee McKinnon?
Yes.
Trustee Ackerman?
Yes.
Trustee Pearson says yes. Meeting is adjourned
Bye,
at
Mike.
7:15.
Okay,
All right.
gentlemen. And,
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
and gentlemen.
Hope you get well soon, Mary.
Thank you, I'm trying.
Okay, hang in there.
Bye. Did you say February